Hey, Rob B here with Rob D, and you're listening to the Property Podcast. This week, the pressure is on. An investor wants to know which property to invest in, and Rob and I are going to help him decide.
Welcome to the Property Podcast, where every Thursday morning, property investors come to be informed and inspired. Thank you for joining us. And like Rob said, we've got a big decision to make on behalf of a listener today. Is he going to be buying in Manchester? Is he going to be buying in Leeds? Two great cities, two interesting investments. And we'll be digging into both of those in detail to help him decide which way to go. So you won't want to miss that. And make sure you stick around all the way to the end, because in Hub Extra, we've got a book that I promise is going to get you excited about numbers.
Now this week, in our news story section, we have an open consultation from the government. Now, I do feel they need some help from the Daily Express with their headline, because the headline is, "A new deal for renting, resetting the balance of rights and responsibilities between landlords and tenants." And Rob, for some reason, you decided to read on.
Well, if that was in the sidebar of the Express, I would not be clicking in it. I'd be going for Hertfordshire woman stunned by something or other. But this is actually worth paying attention to, because this is the consultation about the repeal for Section 21. So you should remember, a couple of months ago, kind of out of the blue, the government announced that they would be doing away with the Section 21 procedure that allows you to repossess without proving any kind of fault on the part of the tenant. Everyone duly freaked out and predicted all kinds of terrible things. Now they've opened up the consultation, so if you are freaking out, you can let the government know what you think of their plans. But the reason this is significant is because if you read the consultation paper, it's a lot less scary than people initially thought it was. So the most important thing that's in there is they've already said that they will put a new ground in there that will allow you to get the property back if you want to sell it. Whereas if they just ripped away Section 21 and left you with Section 8, which is the other slower method where you have to prove fault on the part of the tenant, then you wouldn't have been able to get your property back just because you wanted to sell it. So that's something that everyone was getting worried about that they don't need to worry about anymore. And it also talks more broadly about reform to Section 8 and the need for landlords to get their properties back quickly. So this is really good news, because the worry was that to keep things simple, they'd just rip out Section 21 and leave us with the other method, which would mean we couldn't get our properties back in all the circumstances we're currently used to, and it could take a ridiculously long time. I'm not saying that everything's definitely going to be brilliant, but the consultation making clear that there's more to it than that. They're actually going to make bigger changes and think about it and put something in place is a really good sign. So as with all of these things, it's going to take ages and ages and ages for any firm policy to actually be developed and get through both houses of Parliament. So we'll keep you updated with any major milestones along the way as that winds its way through. But if you do want to respond to this consultation or just have a read of it, it's open till the 12th of October, and you can find the link to it in the show notes.
So it's a listener deals with a twist today, because we're focusing on one listener, and that's Lucky Nathan. Nathan doesn't know this podcast is being made, but when we asked for you to send in your deals, Nathan presented two to us, and he said he's going to invest in one, but he doesn't know which one to invest in. And when we had a very quick look at both properties, we realised that actually this isn't a no-brainer. Normally we can tell pretty quickly if something's going to work or not, but with these two deals, we didn't. So, before we went any further, we decided to switch on the microphones and make a decision for Nathan. Which one should he go for? Or at least which one we would go for. So Rob, what's Nathan looking at?
Okay, so what we're looking at here is Manchester versus Leeds. We've got a two-bedroom flat in the middle of Manchester on Princess Street for £240,000. And we've got a two-bedroom flat in the middle of Leeds at West Point for £245,000. So both two beds, both modern, both move-in ready, both dead central, both pretty much the same price. The only big difference seems to be the city. So let's look at each of them in turn. Then we can do a little bit of a comparison and see if we can pick our winner. So at the moment, we've got the Rightmove links open, but that's all we've done. We haven't really gone any further than that. Let's take Manchester first. Like I said, this is a two-bedroom flat. It's absolutely dead centre. It's only a couple of minutes from both Piccadilly and Oxford Road stations. It's a conversion. I can see from the dates that properties have sold that it's about 15 years ago that this conversion was done. And looking at it internally, it looks great. Absolutely beautiful. You could very happily move right in there. Nathan acknowledges though, Rob, and he's right, that the floor plan is a bit weird on this one.
So Rob, the plans are weird on this one because the second bedroom isn't maybe a double. It's going to be tight. It's a bit of an awkward shape because the plot seems to be on the corner of the building. But it's a real shame, and this is not going to work for podcast at all. But if you look at the plans, which you can't, you can see that the corridor, if it was stopped sooner, you could have made this into a double bedroom. Now, that's going to mean nothing to anybody listening, Rob, but to you, you can see exactly what I mean. And it just seems like a poorly designed layout. There may be structural reasons why it's been done that way, but it just seems like an opportunity missed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I presume that because it's a conversion, they're working around certain constraints. That does mean it's a bit odd, but it is a beautiful conversion. And we will link to this in the show notes so you can see what we're talking about. Let's have a look at the numbers of this one then. So the purchase price that Nathan thinks he'd have to pay here is £240,000. He said that's the asking price. He's going to have to meet it because the agents are trying to create a bidding war. So presumably because Manchester is so popular at the moment, there are lots of interested parties. So 240 on the purchase price. The rent that Nathan thinks he'll have coming in after taking off his management fees is £920 a month. And after factoring in his mortgage and service charge and things like that, he reckons he'll be making a net profit of just under £200 a month, which is going to give him an ROI of 3%. So an ROI of 3%, if you're investing just for the rental income, isn't going to get you too excited. But Nathan said that he's investing for growth. That's what he's looking at here. So making a couple £100 a month is almost like a nice bonus. It's a buffer. It means he's building up some cash to put towards the next deposit. But that's not really what he's in it for. He's in it for the growth. So the question then becomes, is he going to get growth with this property?
The conversion aspect, Rob, is really interesting because it's something different. And having something different in the city centre is something we talked about before. You know, if you can find an angle, then that can put you in good stead. You know, it can put you in a really good place. And parts of this conversion are absolutely beautiful. Like the communal hallways are gorgeous. Again, link in the show notes if you want to go and have a look. But what I'm spotting here from the photos is that the fit out in the apartments itself is basic. They look like cheap kitchens. They probably are. There's not many units there. And everything from the panel heaters, the lighting, everything is base level. It's done cheaply. And that is typical of a lot of conversions you see in Manchester and Liverpool. A few are done really, really well, but most are done like this. And I think it's an opportunity missed, really. Now, you can go in and refurb it yourself, but what happens is the whole block kind of gets a price point, and unless everybody brings their apartments up, it's difficult to create a new price point, a new ceiling. You can certainly attract the best price by upgrading your apartment, putting new kitchens and bathrooms in. But I do feel the overall perception of a block and what it's worth and its desirability does create a price bracket that is hard to get out of. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go for it. It's just an opportunity missed for me. If the price is right and we feel the growth potential is there, which we'll come to as well, then it could be a winner. So, Rob, is the price right?
I think it is. 240 looks about right to me, comparing that to other units on sale in the building. There are a couple, and also looking at what's available within a quarter of a mile. There are some super luxury ones in there for getting up to 300,000-400,000. But everything else seems to be in that sort of 230 to 260-ish kind of bracket. So I think the price as it is now is round about where it should be for the market. I don't think Nathan would be overpaying at that price. What's interesting is when you go back and dig into the price history of this block, which you can do on Rightmove, you can see that this block's had a fair bit of growth in the last few years already. If you go back to 2014 or so, you can see units changing hands for 187,000, 200,000. You go forward into 2015 and there's one for 219,000, 216,000. And now we're up into the 240s. So he's far from catching this at bottom and probably wishing they had gone and bought this a few years ago because he would have had some really nice growth in a short space of time. Manchester's been topping the growth tables, and because this apartment is high quality and it's right in the centre, it's probably benefited more than average. Something else that I like to do is go and figure out how much the owner paid for this when they bought it, because that can give a clue as to what their psychology is going to be and how much breathing space they've got. I can see that this particular unit was last sold in 2013 for 144,000. So whoever's selling this is doing very well out of this. They snapped this up before Manchester really started to kick off. They probably got it at pretty much the bottom, and they're going to walk away from this with pretty much £100,000. So that would normally tell you that the owner has got quite a big margin to play with. There might be some negotiation you can do, because it's not like they're selling at a loss. It's not like they need to hit a certain figure to be able to pay their mortgage back. But because Manchester is so strong at the moment, that's probably not going to be an angle you can use unless you've got some kind of advantage over other buyers, such as buying with cash or something else to give you an edge.
So it's a really interesting prospect, a really interesting investment. But before we kind of get too far down the line and start saying, should you invest or not, we have something else to look at. And it's an apartment in Leeds. So this is going to be much different. Yes, it is in the city centre. And again, it's walking distance from the train station. Price point, as we've already said, is very similar. It's listed for $245,000. But that's where the similarities end. The rent is also similar, $1,000. And the ROI, a little bit more, 4.1%. But the difference between 3% and 4.1% is less than 60 quid. So nothing that's going to change your life. So if you're not going to make this decision on ROI. So while that makes it sound like these properties are very similar, when you look at the properties themselves, they are completely different. Because what we have here is a high-end new build. So we've got a conversion versus a new build. Rob, first impression to the photos is this is definitely a property of higher spec. The specification is nice. It's got nicer lighting. It's got downlights in most of the rooms. The kitchen seems a really nice spec. There's an American stainless steel fridge freezer. I have no idea how they got this in because it's on the 6th floor, but well done to them. And it's also got a pretty sizable balcony, which is that kind of, when we talked about before, looking for something different, having a large balcony, definitely ticking the boxes. The bathroom is gorgeous, huge shower in there, and the balcony runs from both of the bedrooms. So there's a lot going on here. There's a lot to like. And if that isn't enough, the square footage, the last one was around 600 square foot. This one's 914. So a huge difference in size as well. So does that make it a no-brainer? Same price, but Leeds has got a lot more? Well, no, because they're in different parts of the cycle. So with so many plus points, is this competition done? Well, no. There's a few things to consider. But before we come to our conclusions, let's look at pricing. We did the same in Manchester. Rob, what's the price history on this one?
This is another really interesting one. Leeds hasn't had the growth in the last few years that Manchester had, at least not when you look at the home track data. And it's perceived as being further behind in the cycle. But if you look back to 2016, you can see that flats in this building were going for around 183,000, 175,000, 172,000. Then the most recent sale of a two-bed in here, fast forwarding to January 2019, was 223,000. So there's been a big uplift in just a couple of years, because Nathan's talking about paying 245,000. To me, 245 looks a bit ambitious. If it was me, I'd be trying to get the price down from there. It's a fair bit higher than the most recent comp. There's another one on sale in this building for 205. Now that one has a smaller balcony. I don't think it's as big and it looks a little bit more tired inside, but that's still quite a big differential. So if it was me, I'd be trying to knock the price on here. But Nathan says, again, he reckons that because of competition, he's going to be forced up to the asking price on this one.
Yeah, it could be that this is one of the larger ones in the block. Over 900 square foot for a two-bed apartment is huge. It's really big. So that combined with the balcony may mean why it's setting the new price boundary. And also, it's so desirable now it's on the market. So it's always difficult to make that leap of faith when you're investing if it's at new price points, particularly if the exact comps aren't there as well. It could be argued that this is the riskier of the two. And that's because the one in Manchester, the price point is proven at that level, and Manchester has a bit more of a track record with price growth. However, as we touched on already, Nathan is getting a lot more for his money in Leeds. And that's because Leeds is a little bit further behind Manchester in the property cycle. Now, one agent has told Nathan that Leeds is 10 years behind. I can promise you it's not 10 years behind, but it is a few years behind. And where the price history in Manchester has shown how people have done so well by getting in early, there's an opportunity here as well. So there's an opportunity in Leeds, but is this the right opportunity? This is why it's so tough, Rob, because we say look for something different. And I would say of the two, the Leeds one is the more unique one. I know the other one's a conversion, but there are a lot of conversions in Manchester and a lot of sort of basic spec conversions. New builds, again, there's a lot of new builds in Leeds. But what we have in this one is that, big balcony, the huge size, the nice specification. It stands out. It's something different. It catches your eye, and it's probably why so many people are looking at it. It's a toughie.
It's a really tough one. I've been going back and forth on which one I'd go for the whole time that we've been talking. And I think I've now made up my mind. Are you at that point yet?
I think so. But I want you to go first because I might have a more controversial view on this one.
Okay, I'll go first. And I'm surprising myself on this one, but I would go for Manchester. And the reason that I've surprised myself is that I'm always looking for value. And in Leeds, I'm saying, well, for the same money, I'm getting something much, much bigger. The spec looks much better. And from Nathan's point of view, because it's further behind in the cycle, you'd think on a city level, at least, putting the specific apartment aside, there's going to be more upside potential there. So that would be the one to go for. However, what's holding me back on the one in Leeds is feel like, is it 240? I'd just be nervous that I was overpaying. And that's probably silly because, if you're holding it for 10 plus years, it is going to have all that growth. If you're paying 10 grand too much at the start, it's not actually going to make that big a difference in the scheme of things. But I'd still feel a bit hesitant about doing that. Whereas the one in Manchester, I'm confident in the price. It's a beautiful building. The location couldn't be any better. And that feels like one that's just going to rent and rent and rent. No hassle at all. And as Manchester continues to boom, and we both believe it will do that, in 10, 15 years' time, 240 is going to be looking very cheap indeed. So, that's me. What's your controversial view, Rob?
Controversial may be a bit strong, but I must say I've loved doing this because I had no idea what you're going to go for. I'm really torn on this. Both are good investments. They're good. Neither are great. And I know the purpose of this episode is to pick one, but I would be looking to make one of these great. Now, for me, there's two ways of doing that. Leeds is get the price down, but that might not be possible. But pushing the price down by 20,000 suddenly makes that possibly a great investment. So is there a way to bring that down, to make that great? Who knows? The Manchester one, I think you can make that great in a different way. I think if you spend 10,000 on that apartment, just to put new flooring in, if possible, new lighting, and a new kitchen, that's going to look like a completely different place. The communal areas of that apartment block are beautiful, period features, gorgeous, gorgeous place to be. The apartments themselves just let that down. So I would say the Manchester one with a 10k budget spend, or the Leeds one with a 20k reduction, and which if you can't get the 20k reduction, then go for the Manchester and spend the 10, and then that will make a huge difference. Now, you can choose to spend the 10 now or later on down the line because it's in perfectly good enough condition to let out now, and you'd have to run the numbers to see if I spent 10 grand on it, how much rental uplift would it give me? So you can approach it from, I'm going to spend this in the future. So it's a no on both, but a yes with a little change to both. So I could end up with two here, Rob.
Well, the good news is you're not going to be outbidding Nathan by the sounds of it. So if he wants to get him at those prices, he can. So hopefully that'll help Nathan decide. We've given him the confidence that they're both good, not great deals. And there's nothing that we can spot that makes one of them a clear winner. So hopefully Nathan will be able to weigh up the different factors there and decide which is going to be the best investment for him. What's clear here is something that we've said many times before, which is there is no perfect investment. We've looked at both of these and we found a lot to like, and we found things that we don't like so much. You can look at any property, however beautiful, and find a reason to be put off. And that can be a good thing. It's good to be choosy. But as we've also said many times in the past, Rob, there is no such thing as a perfect investment. So you could end up spending years going around looking at things, not buying anything, because you could always find something that's not perfect.
Yeah, if you want to find a reason not to invest in any deal, you're going to find it. Whatever investment you go for, there'll be a very good reason you can tell yourself why you should not invest. There's always going to be one. Perfect doesn't exist. And as we've said before, you're not looking for perfect, you're just looking for very good. Now, I would categorise both of those deals as good, and with a bit of tweaking, they possibly could become very good. But Nathan could carry on looking for another 2 years and not find that perfect deal, because it doesn't exist. But you've also got to have balance here. That while you're never going to find the perfect deal, and once you found something that's categorised as a very good deal, then you've got to pull the trigger. But the balance is, make sure you haven't got deal bias. We've seen lots of deals come through on these type of episodes where we've gone, poof, no, not for us, avoid that one. But other people may have gone for them. And that's because they've put the research in, the time, the effort. They may have even viewed the properties. They've spoken to a mortgage broker. They've kind of put time commitments in. So are starting to cite themselves up into making a purchase. And even if the terms aren't favourable and what you're going for isn't a great investment, it's average, or worse still, it's poor. Because you put that time in, you kind of feel pot committed and you just push on, and that deal bias will get you over the finish line. You have to be prepared at any point to walk away. If you go for those deals and you go, you know what, the Leeds one's for me, but I've got to get 20 grand off, and as at bare minimum 15, but suddenly you find that you're paying full asking price, but you really like the property. Well, if you've said to yourself, no, it's got to be at this reduction, don't start talking yourself around. Your rational self helped you in the beginning. Don't let your irrational self start talking you into deals that aren't quite right. So it's balance, Rob. While some people need a push and need to take that plunge, particularly people who've never invested before or are investing at a very slow pace, that they need to know perfection isn't out there. For those more gung-ho listeners, they also need to know that, wait a minute, not every deal is a barnstormer, and just because you've spent a bit of time on it doesn't mean you need to invest in it.
Yep, so a really interesting one. Thank you, Nathan, for sending us those. We've really enjoyed getting into both of those and ending up torn between the two, as you are. So good luck with making your decision, and do let us know what you end up doing.
So it's time for a success story from one of our listeners. You can get them in however you want. You can send us a carrier pigeon, but hopefully you'll be a bit more efficient. You'll use Instagram or Facebook, or you can find us at Property Hub UK, or you can leave us an iTunes review. We do like them. However you want to do it, we're grateful. Just let us know how you're getting on. Like, what are you doing? How are you putting the podcast to use? Or the other resources we put out there. We love to hear about you taking action. And this week's no different. We've got a great review on iTunes from Chesa, who's delivered 5 stars. Thank you, Chesa. And Chesa says, being a landlord can be a lonely place sometimes. Agree with that. Rob and Rob give excellent advice. It's like being in a virtual room with people that are much smarter than myself. Well, Chesa, if you heard this before editing, you may disagree. Since listening, I've changed my accountants to Property Hub Tax. I've changed my mortgage broker to someone I found on the forum. And I've remortgaged one of my 3 HMOs to finance a single let in my new limited company. The 2 Robs have made me excited about property again. Many thanks. Well, many thanks to you, Chesa. This gets us excited. The fact that we sit down on a Monday morning around 7 a.m, turn on our microphones, and somehow these words translate into people like yourself taking action and getting excited about this subject again is just blooming awesome. It's 8 o'clock in the morning now because we've been recording for a bit, and reading that you've done this on a Monday morning has lifted me. And I know it's the same for you, Rob. It's awesome. Thank you, Chesa.
Time now, just before we wrap up, for the part of the show that we call Hub Extra. This is where we give you a resource, a tool, a tip, something to help you with your life a little bit beyond property normally. And for more like this, if you're a Property Hub member, every Friday in your inbox you'll have the Hub Extra email dropping that will give you loads more great stuff. And this, Rob, is a book that I recommended to you. I sent you off on your holiday with it, and it's a book on the face of it about accounting. And I promised you I wasn't trying to ruin your holiday because I was jealous. It really is a great book, and I think you ended up agreeing.
It's an awesome book. It really is. And you may be thinking, oh, why are we recommending a book on accounting? Because it's not about property accounting, it's just general business accounting. But property is a business. Now, the book is a bit of a wordy title, The Ultimate Blueprint for an Insanely Successful Business. Now, that's kind of a very flash title, as Rob said, a book about accounting. But it's so important to treat your property endeavours like a business, particularly as you grow your portfolio. The numbers are key. It's so much more than your ROI or what your mortgage rate is right now. You should be having your numbers reported to you in a meaningful way. You can get your accountant, if it's not Property Hub Tax, to follow it. But if you're with Property Hub Tax, then This is the type of things we look to do for you. It's making sure that you're getting meaningful numbers that will help you make better decisions. And the bigger your portfolio gets, the more important it is. Now, it's not a meaty book. It's one that you can read through in a few sittings. And if you're not big on financial numbers, don't worry. Rob and I, while appreciate it, it's not our fun place to be. But we came away from reading this book very excited. So if you've got a business, this is a no-brainer. Go and buy it. We'll link to it in the show notes. But even if you don't, property is a business as well. And once you start to build a meaningful size portfolio, this book is a must.
So that's us done for another episode of the Property Podcast. Hope you've enjoyed it. We've really enjoyed it. Always good fun digging into deals. Let us know what else you want us to talk about in the future. You can send your suggestions our way on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. On all of those, you'll find us at Property Hub UK. And if you haven't already, go subscribe to our YouTube channel because there is lots more free education on there. We will see you next for Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday. So until then, have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.